In this two-part series, we're looking at the best Royal Caribbean Alaska cruises. But are they the best Alaska cruises, regardless of cruise line? What do you get? Why Royal Caribbean versus anyone else? If there's something better in the same class of cruising, what are they? There's a lot to cover, but I'll try to keep it short and concise so my video editor doesn't cut me off. Welcome to This is the Cruise. I'm Clint, and this is the channel where we look at upcoming cruise itineraries and try to find out if this is the cruise for you. Today, we're looking at Royal Caribbean's 2025 and 2026 Alaska cruise itineraries. We'll discuss the pros and cons of cruising Royal Caribbean to Alaska, and then the types of things you may want to consider when picking out your Alaska itinerary. Then we'll dive into where Royal Caribbean visits in Alaska, and I'll share a few itineraries to avoid with some alternatives and give you my top picks. It's a two-parter because Royal Caribbean has around 33 distinct Alaska itineraries over the next 2 seasons. I'm not going to review them all, so don't worry. I also know that a lot of 2025 is sold out, and that makes me wonder, why? Are there alternatives? Is there anything better? So in part 2, we'll look at those. All right, why Royal Caribbean and Alaska? There are a few advantages. They have the absolute best mega ships, if that's your thing. Their ships provide some of the best, most excellent family-friendly opportunities on the ship itself. But let's be honest, if your kids are really young, they're not going to truly appreciate all that Alaska has to offer. I mean, even teenagers may be tempted to take a few selfies to say they've been to Alaska, but still not fully engage and appreciate where they are. So this is a great way to make sure everyone has a great vacation. The young kids can be entertained, while those that will appreciate the Alaska environment will be able to do so. I really see this as the singular advantage of cruising Royal Caribbean to Alaska. There are some disadvantages. Their small ships do leave a lot to be desired. There's nothing special about these itineraries really at all. All the cruise lines do these destinations, and the prices are on the higher side. However, if you're a Royal Caribbean fan, then you're going to enjoy it because you enjoy Royal Caribbean, not necessarily because they do anything with an Alaska itinerary that gives them any advantage over any other cruise line. We just need to be honest about that. So let's talk about what you want to get out of Alaska and an Alaska cruise and see if Royal Caribbean can make that happen for you. Will you experience the natural beauty of Alaska? Absolutely. Will you have a cooler vacation? And by cooler, I mean not as hot as the Caribbean and not as hot as the Mediterranean. I've been to both of those places in the summer, and whoa, they are hot. Absolutely. I mean, you're in Alaska. However, I will note that when we were in Juneau, it was 80 degrees, so it wasn't exactly cold. Will you be able to sample Alaska and have kind of that Alaska sampler experience? Check. Absolutely. Can you have an immersive Alaska experience? Well, if you added a land tour, it's possible, and I'll briefly touch on that in a little bit. Okay, the marquee, glaciers. Will you be able to experience glaciers on Royal Caribbean? Yes, kind of. You just have to be careful, so stay tuned. All right, so let's talk about where Royal Caribbean departs from. Seattle is one of their primary departure ports. Vancouver is the other. And then Seward, Alaska. They only visit kind of the standard Alaska destinations. There's nothing really, nothing unique here that Royal Caribbean does that no one else really hits. You're going to be able to go to Juneau, Ketchikan, Haines, Icy Strait Point, Sitka, Skagway, Seward, and then if you're departing from Seattle, you may stop in you will stop in either Prince Rupert or Victoria, British Columbia. And that's because every cruise that leaves from the United States has to stop in Canada per the law. What about the glaciers? Well, there are 3 kind of potential options here with glaciers. You could visit Tracy Arm Fjord, which has a couple of glacier options there. Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier is another one in the same area. And kind of the marquee glacier that Royal Caribbean visits is Hubbard Glacier, which is massive, absolutely massive. On top of that, if you're departing from Vancouver, you will have a lovely, beautiful day cruising the Inside Passage as you make your way up to Alaska. But that's only on the Vancouver itineraries. Speaking of itineraries, let's jump into those. There are two primary kinds of itineraries. There are the round trips, those either are from Seattle or Vancouver. And then there are the northbound from Vancouver to Seward, Alaska itineraries, or the southbound from Seward to Vancouver. Those are one-way cruises, and that's actually not a bad thing to consider because you could add on an additional package to explore more of Alaska on your own. This lets you create a more immersive Alaska experience, but you don't need to book that through Royal Caribbean. It is nice, however, because it would be a complete package, but there's nothing stopping you from flying to Anchorage, heading up to Denali on your own, or even better yet, flying to Fairbanks, starting there, and then making your way back through Denali, down through Anchorage, keep going all the way down to Seward, where you can catch your ship and begin your cruise back to Vancouver. You can also book a round trip this way and have a 14-day cruise. You would cruise up from Vancouver to Seward, and on that same day that you're in Seward, you would visit Seward, then you'd get back on the ship, and then you would cruise back to Vancouver. But for a 14-day, there are definitely better alternatives. So check the description below. I've done a number of longer Alaska cruise itinerary reviews, and there are some great options out there. All right, so let's take a look at the actual itineraries. There are some ones that give me pause. I'd personally avoid anything that doesn't visit a glacier unless you've already visited glaciers before. If this is your first time cruising to Alaska, I highly, 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 highly recommend making sure a glacier is on your itinerary. Don't discount it until you've done it. They can be spectacular. Some people see them and they're like, that was really nice, and now I don't need to do it again. And then, you can pick any of these itineraries. However, we've done it. We've been to Glacier Bay in particular, and we have a hard time imagining not visiting glaciers when we go to Alaska. Here are a few examples that don't visit glaciers. Quantum of the Seas, sailing from Seattle on May 7th, 2025, September 15th, 2025, September 22nd, 2025. Do not visit glaciers. And, those are on shoulder seasons. Those are, we call shoulder season cruises. But that doesn't mean you can't visit a glacier in that time frame, right? I mean, you should be able to. These cruise itineraries get a CLINS cruisability score of about 67. Voyager of the Seas from Seattle, sailing on May 8th, 2026, also no glaciers. This gets a CLINS cruisability score of 68.23. Anthem of the Seas from Seattle, sailing on May 9th, 2025, May 11th, 2025, September 21st, 2025. Again, no glaciers. These get a CLINS cruisability score of around 69. There are more, but these score particularly low. And all of these that I listed here are really in the shoulder seasons. So maybe that's the reason, right? It's the season, spring and fall. They may be harder to get glaciers in, harder to visit. That might be true. But you're tuned in here to find out if there's anything better. And you may be thinking, look, Clint, May or September are the only dates that work for me. All right, I'll take that challenge. Serenade of the Seas from Vancouver on May 4th, 2025, visits Tracy Arm Fjord, which is Sawyer Glacier. You could see Sawyer Glacier on that cruise. That gets a CLINS cruisability score of 78.4. Radiance of the Seas from Vancouver on May 9th, 2025, visits Hubbard Glacier. That gets a CLINS cruisability score of 80.6. More on that one later. Now you may be thinking, that's fine, but these are small ships. I want one of those mega ships. Okay. Ovation of the Seas leaves from Vancouver on May 15th, 2026, and visits Hubbard Glacier. That gets a CLINS cruisability score of 78.5. All right, you're thinking, okay, but I want a mega ship from Seattle. Great. Quantum of the Seas leaves from Seattle on May 12th, 2025, and visits Endicott Arm and Dawes Glacier. That gets a CLINS cruisability score of 71.73. So you see, even Royal Caribbean thinks they can visit glaciers on megaships from Seattle during the shoulder seasons. I honestly don't know what's going on there. If you have any ideas, please let me know in the comments below. And maybe we can figure out what they're thinking and why they're just skipping glaciers on these itineraries. So before I continue, remember, hit that like or subscribe button. And if I've helped you maybe look at itineraries differently or pick just the right itinerary for you, consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a safe and secure link in the description below. Really helps me out. Or even better, you could consider joining the channel for added bonuses, including access to my scoring platform, which is currently in beta. I even offer merch if you would like to support the channel in a fashionable way. Okay, on to the best itineraries. A number of itineraries score kind of right in the middle of the pack as far as ratings go. However, Serenade of the Seas seems to have the best overall, strongest itineraries, and she leaves from Vancouver. Just make sure you're getting a glacier in that itinerary, and you're going to have a great cruise for both the 2025 and 2026 offerings. I'm going to give honorable mention, though, in the I want to bring my family to Alaska, but they're not really going to appreciate Alaska, so we need a resort ship category to Anthem of the Seas, sailing from Seattle on June 22nd, 2026, July 20th, 2026, August 17th, 2026, August 24th, 2026. I completely empathize with this category. I have young nephews, 5 young nephews. And if we wanted to go to Alaska as a family with them, this is likely our best bet across the board of any cruise line. That is a good one. On this itinerary, you'll visit Ketchikan. We would take the family to a logging show, most likely. Then you're going to visit Sitka. Got to go see the bear preserve, the raptor preserve. Awesome. Great for kids. Then you're going to go to Endicott Arm, visit Dawes Glacier. So you're going to get that glacier experience. Then you're going to stop at Juneau, which we would take one of the buses to Mendenhall Park and visit Mendenhall Glacier and the waterfall and do some hiking and walking around there with the kids. It's a great way to have that sampler of Alaska with the whole family while still being able to get back onto the ship where everyone's having a great time. And finally, we're going to visit Victoria. It's because this does leave from Seattle. So, Victoria, British Columbia, I wouldn't really get off the ship there. You don't get in until after 5 o'clock at night. And at that point, things start kind of closing down. This is really just a maritime requirement that the ship stops there. And from there, we'll make our way back to Seattle. That sounds like a really nice family vacation, if you ask me. I will note, though, that Ovation of the Seas, another megaship, has slightly better rated itineraries than this one, but they're one-way sailings. And that's tough for a family for this kind of vacation where you're bringing and trying to wrangle a bunch of kids. So, because you have to I think transporting them with different airports is a little bit harder. These Anthem of the Seas sailings on these dates get a Clint's Cruisability score of 73.6. Not bad. Not bad. In second place is the previously mentioned Radiance of the Seas from Vancouver on either May 9th or September 19th of this year. It's tough because this one's close to sold out. However, consider checking around the 90-day mark prior to the departure date. That's when people generally have to commit and pay for their cruise, and sometimes space does open up right around there. This one visits Juneau, Hubbard Glacier, right? The premier glacier. It's just so massive and so big. You're also going to go to Icy Strait Point and Ketchikan, and then have a nice scenic cruise on the Inside Passage. I really like this itinerary overall. It gets a Clint's Cruisability score of 80.6. The downside to this one is that Cruise Critic rates this ship on the lower side for Royal Caribbean. It's a 4 out of 5, which really isn't that bad, to be honest. It's just that Royal Caribbean is known for their great ships, and most of them score between 4.5 and 5 out of 5. One thing to note, though, is that this ship was refreshed in 2024, so it shouldn't feel too tired or worn out. Okay, in first place comes a 7-night Alaska Inside Passage cruise on Serenade of the Seas. Again, you can't go wrong with almost any of Serenade's sailings, but this single sailing takes the cake. Why? Well, she visits 2 glaciers in 7 days, and you still get the standard 3 stops. You leave from Vancouver, then you're going to cruise the Inside Passage, then visit Sitka, then cruise Tracy Arm Fjord and glaciers there, then go to Juneau, then visit Hubbard Glacier, and finally Ketchikan before cruising back to Vancouver. This one gets a Clint's Cruisability score of 85.94 and is the highest rated Royal Caribbean itinerary to Alaska in the 2025 and 2026 season. So that's what Royal Caribbean is offering. But the question is that I ask myself is, would I pick any of these? Royal Caribbean's a great cruise line and there's a lot on offer and they have great service. But the short answer is probably not. It's complicated. If we were traveling with my young extended family, then that itinerary on Anthem of the Seas is very appealing. But they're not the best cruise line if you want to cruise Alaska. And don't get me wrong, just wait before you start lighting up the comments. Do comment if you disagree with me, but Royal Caribbean is a great cruise line if you're looking for an awesome vacation. But if a great vacation focused on Alaska is your goal, there are better alternatives that score higher, cost less money, and actually offer a higher class of service. Of course, you have to decide why you're visiting Alaska. We just looked at some of the itinerary options and I gave you the scores that came out of my algorithm. All right, make sure to like and subscribe and give that notification bell a little tap for me so that way you won't miss my next video where I look at what those other alternatives are. I've got some surprises coming, so stay tuned. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, stay cruising.